Yes, indeed. We're back. What did Mama say? Mortimer, we're back. Yes, welcome back. You are through to Mad Poet Podcast. I am the Mad Poet, Alex Murdoch. And, you know, another rabbit hole to explore, as they say. Great to be here. Another episode. Me and Strings, the Mr. String Theory himself in the building.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you coming through. How you doing, Strings?
Good man. This rabbit hole is going to be fun.
Obviously, it's somewhat obviously. I'm sure you'd imagine it's somewhat connected to what we spoke about somewhat
Mm-hmm.
last episode we did. Um, in a sense, reversing things. We spoke
Okay.
about ascension, if you will,
Mm. Mm, mm,
towards
mm.
the plane. I want to just flip it on its head. Speaking about mortals as we are, which is more relatable. How would you somewhat how would you ascend? How would you turn a mortal into a god? That would be my first question.
You don't.
You don't?
Yeah.
All
Some
right,
aren't meant for that.
I want to hear your answer to that.
Mm.
Why would you say that?
Before I even, you know what? Let me just make a quick note because prior towards the end of the last ep that we did, I started seeing things pop up in regards to what you said about when if you put someone in a position to face their fears too quickly, they can get paralyzed. And that's been on my mind since. And it's made me think about some of the things that I've been exposed to um, and what that's led me down to to where I am now. But to answer the question, I'll say, yeah, most mortals aren't meant for that journey. Simply being, I think that's why I mentioned it because it's tied to that. If you give them um, circumstances similar
Mm,
um, to that, I think they won't be able to harvest a particular mindset to tap into that way of perception. So even if they come out of it, they'll say, "Yeah, I survived. Great, that's
yeah.
it." Whereas um, gods are seen as, I probably said this last time, they're revered for their level of knowledge and wisdom to see
Mm,
things like from so many different angles. And mind you, you hear this every day when someone says it's not that deep or
yeah.
I don't like to think much about certain things.
Mm,
Um, but when they want answers, who do you go to? You go to someone that does. But on the day to
yeah.
day, they're not, they're just like, I don't have the energy for it. So why would someone or most people who are like that want to tap into that? It's it's a no-go zone for a reason
Mm,
because it can send people sideways very quickly if they are too eager to do that, which is what your um, theme of discussion about rites of passage. So it's a passage for a reason. Without proper counsel, you will crumble. You'll be cooked.
mm.
And depending on which level of godhood you try and get into, yeah, it's not nice.
I want to ask it a different way because I want to see if you still share the same opinion that
Mm.
you just gave. What if I said, how would you immortalize a mortal? What would you say to that?
Wow. What a question.
It's a little bit different
It
spin.
is. It is. Because that word is so. And I'm glad you've asked it because it can make me think. But I can't. Naturally, I fixate on what that word means and how that pertains to.
Immortalized, you're talking about.
Yeah,
It's a multifaceted, especially speaking
it
about,
really is.
it's different. Mm.
Initially, the first thing that came to mind was give them everything that they want. Yeah, give him water everything he wants. Fame,
Mm.
money. Um, so that way they are again revered to a specific height that mortals all want to achieve and attain. So if you give them that, essentially, yeah, bro, what? Did you hear about my man? He did this. Um,
Mm.
how did he do it? It's never been done before. That's ticked off. So probably just leave that
See, I
there.
see. I think I see it differently. I don't think that necessarily immortalize somebody. I think that just somewhat give them abundance. That's abundance.
Mm. But when I say give them everything, it's to the point where um, being forgotten, not being forgotten. So give them the accolades or the lifestyle that they think will grant them that worldly title that you will never forget what I've done kind of thing. Um, yeah, because when most people have that, it's
Yeah,
why
you
absolutely Jim Carrey's famous for saying that. He said it. I wish everyone was rich and famous, so that way they can see that it's not worth having. So essentially, you give them what they want, they will have that. And Three Stacks as well. As of late, he's just said it's. He said something amazing actually. He said, being
yeah,
famous is not natural.
yeah.
Everyone just.
You have a point. You have a point. I think you're onto something. It's just you're broad stroking, so it's a little bit all over there, all over the place a little bit. So we just not kind of need to fine tune it. Yeah, I think for me personally, when you're thinking about immortal, right? You do have a point with the Jim Carrey situation that you're speaking about. But when I think about immortalizing immortal, I think it's sort of almost evolving. And we spoke about myths and legends previously, evolving their being beyond the mere tangible skin and flesh.
Mm,
I mean, the most immediate way that comes to mind is legacy.
that's I
A
still.
legacy that echoes,
That's
goes
why,
immortality.
and I'm glad you said that. That's why I still stand on what I say. Give a mortal everything he wants in his lifetime.
See, that's what I say in your broad stroking though, because everything doesn't necessarily mean immortality.
Yeah. So all right.
So give me specifics.
Wow, funny. Let's even look at the word. Immortal. The word's still in it.
The word still in it.
Yeah. So, uh, because of that, all right, guys, help me out here. How do we bring this down? Because even with that, I still am trying to find the answer to bring it down to the
You know what that
level of
reminds me of?
mortal. What?
That reminds me of the term demigod, right?
Ah, so,
Because as much as you're a god, you're still a mortal. You're still only half.
but what do I think like? This is where it
What do
all
you
comes
think
down
like?
to. Mm,
Your mentality, you're saying.
yeah. That's what
Yeah,
separates each category. Because gods are forgotten,
yeah,
but they're still
true.
gods. They don't care.
But then, does that mean you're um do you have the full title of a god if you're forgotten?
Yeah. How did I get there?
I beg to differ. I beg to differ. You know
Yeah.
why I say that? Because when you think about a god, right?
Mm.
All and we're speaking about the facets of a god is it's limitless almost,
Mm.
you know. But you can't necessarily say that to a mortal. And the reason why I say that is as much as you might say you reach precipice of or like ascended beyond,
Mm-hmm.
you can only imagine that happening in certain facets, not all of them.
Mm.
Ergo demigod, right? So as much as you're a god, you can still die,
Yes.
you know, from the
100%.
stray bullet. I don't know why I throw that out.
Yeah.
But I'm
And
just
yeah,
like,
I hear it.
you know what I mean?
Mm.
It's that. So this goes back to go what we're talking about now, immortality, where that's why I'm asking for specifics because it can't be broad stroking because there's only certain ways I could attain immortality as a mortal in my mind, the way I see it.
Well, all right. So I think back to the time if we look at the word, um, I even want to even look it up just so that I hit every
For immortality,
yeah, because
I could,
from where I'm at, um, it's heavily attached to what the name um lives on for after the mortal body has passed on.
mm.
That's the fixed.
Immortality is the
Mm.
concept of endless existence, essentially living forever without the limitation of death. It encompasses the idea of continued life.
Okay, boom, I got it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
why is man my when I hear about the topic or when it's covered in different analogies and stories is that it's always man that is fixated on living forever. Why?
Yeah. Well, that's the one
Even
thing
even
we
though
can't do.
you say gods can die, they're not
Demigod.
fast. Yeah, even Demi, yeah, they have a long span. They're not concerned. But it is man that wants to live beyond his means.
I
So
think
I think with
there's
man
a
there's a level of greed there that they feel
I wouldn't call it greed. I think it's just
mm,
human nature or
mm,
the nature of beings where you want something that you to begin with, you want something you can't. But
yes.
grass and you know, next to the grass is greener, but it's one of these things where it's so idolized amongst your peers or amongst people that are just mortals like
A
us.
certain number,
Yeah,
I think what's human nature is fear.
absolutely, absolutely.
So with
We are
the
fully creatures.
right, so with the word of choice is that um if the root of yeah, oh, the root of um why they would want to attain it is i.e. I haven't done enough or they haven't experienced certain things or the grass is greener, let me go and jump in that grass. um so that's why I just like roll it all into one and say the root of that is fear because um if you feel you haven't attained enough, surely
Yeah.
your deeds will do that for you. But when you start to chase it, that's where it starts to get blurry, because then it's like, what's making you chase that already? At some point you must have done amazing things already, but it having to go beyond, it's where you start chasing um something that isn't there. And I think that's where the disconnect starts to come. So when I mentioned Jim and giving a man everything he wants, is that until they question their hunger and the greed for where it's coming from, essentially they'll never be satisfied. So until you speak to that, is when you'll start to be able to see that you can still like live your name or your deeds live beyond the ages, but then it'll be a different
Mm.
approach towards it.
Let me give you a different viewpoint on this,
Mm-hmm.
and then I want to hear what you think. They have this saying where there's nothing. Um, I guess you could say the word. There's nothing sad or more sad than a man that's never reached the pinnacle of his potential. Now, there is no finite or exact definition of what the pinnacle is for a man.
Mm,
The only thing we can argue is that it is what you make it.
absolutely.
So, with that being said, regardless of what I attain as my pinnacle overall in the end,
Mm,
the fact is, while I'm here, I'm still chasing. So, if I envision the pinnacle as me, me being me living forever, and by means to attain this while I'm here, so that by any means, if I'm not here anymore, it don't matter because I've reached a pinnacle where it's solidified my legendary status or my myth as this
mm-hmm.
being like Achilles, right? Where
Great
I'm
analogy.
such a god in my time that
Mm,
while even though I was mortal, people still saw me as a god anyway. So it didn't matter whether I'm dead or not. It's too late. I'm legit.
mm,
You get what I mean?
yeah.
So I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's not necessarily fear. It don't have to be fear. It could just be ambition. It could just be hunger for this.
I feel everything
You know?
has a stage. Different emotions have different stages. When you overcome them, you get into new stages. The further you go, um the more clarity you get. Now, I was watching something a few months ago, and there was a character,
Yeah.
um and he was essentially, the time he lived, he was deemed a god. And when someone asked him, why did you start reigning tyranny when you did so many good for so many years? He said, along the way, I
Yeah.
forgot. He forgot. So he just started to be an angry king, so to speak. Um,
Yeah.
Now, immortality and like your name living on or whatever, it's as quiet as kept, it's all attributed to contribution. What has that
Yeah.
name contributed to whatever field it wants to attain said legacy? So, um, but my question to you is, once you as an individual has identified what your pinnacle is, once you've reached it, will you be satisfied? I think that's the question I have in regards to legacy and being immortal. I think the word satisfaction is erased because if you want something forever, that means the word satisfaction cannot exist.
The question I would ask you is, what is satisfaction?
And
But
I
stick a
think,
pin in that for a
yeah,
second.
let's do that.
So let's explore that, because what is satisfaction? And I'm thinking about the definition of such, because yes, certain people satisfaction is like, okay, I've arrived, now I pause or I stop.
Mm,
But in my mind, from what I know of somebody that's arrived, that means now you're,
just getting started.
the word entropy comes to mind. And I was speaking to somebody about this the other day, and there's an artist that focus is their art is entropy, which is basically decay.
Okay.
So what I'm thinking is, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, yes, you arrived. So that means you stop, or you pause, or you don't do anymore. You don't continue with the process anymore. From what I know, once you stop, you revert. Well, entropy, you decay, right? You go
Mm.
backwards. So now I'm not saying this status, but in certain facets, this is gonna happen. The point I'm
Yeah.
trying to make is, the point I'm trying to make is,
Mm-hmm.
there is no stopping. There is only the process.
Yeah. Okay. I agree. Yeah, I
Okay.
agree. Definitely. It's and how that's even looked as if, one of my favorite writers in film
Mm,
is they'll just pick up something else. They will start it's like life. You will start again, but it will be a different again viewpoint. So say
mm,
one writes and they reach their pinnacle, whether it's the success, satisfaction from the quality of the craft that they've created.
yeah.
Once that source feels that they've run dry, whatever it is, they'll say, you know what? I still love the arts. Let me contribute to it in a different way, i.e., mentoring, studying production more. Um, so in that sense, I agree. There's no stopping. It's just you pick up something else and you start from scratch like a child. I think that's the key that I'm lean towards, because once that dies, then I start feeling that's where the decay comes into it, because then it's like, okay, um, you're only
Well,
chasing the high and that's it. Okay.
mm,
Like
the want
there's
or need
so
is not
much
there.
more. Sorry?
Are you saying the want or need is not there anymore, so it
Yeah,
disappears?
absolutely it has to change. But the want is will have to come into question as well, because once you reach whatever viewpoint you arrive at, naturally you ask yourself, okay, is that it? What else
Mm,
is there? And if you don't know how to answer that question, depending on the groundwork that you've done as an individual prior to that moment, then
yeah,
naturally people will say, oh, you should pick up a hobby,
yeah.
because it insinuates the fact of you saying, try something new.
Mm,
And you're like, no, I want to keep, and it's like, brother, like, it's the this wheel of life. What goes up must
right.
chill. You get me? So,
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. It's just for me, if and that's just the way I see certain things as a path. I think you have to. I think I mentioned this before, where you have to fall in love with the process, because once the process is defined as complete in your view, you pretty much, there's nowhere to go after that.
mm, not me. There's infinite amount of ways to go.
Really though?
Absolutely.
But what I'm saying is, if
Absolutely.
ways to go, right? That means you're not about that life anymore. That's not your
No,
process.
mm-mm. I think I said this. I've said this before.
Yeah,
Um, me first, me before everything I touch. So if I say I'm limitless, that applies to
yeah.
everything I touch. So as long as I stay true to me, and what that means is, um, I would take that part of the process and apply it to every single thing I touch. And the more I am in tune with myself, when I get that nudge to say, hey, you time to move on. Oh, why? You have that tug and pull because of the affection that you've grown towards it, which is good. But then ultimately, I would say, well, I had an amazing run. That doesn't mean it's over. I'll go and have fun in on another path.
Would you say that's the same thing to do with this topic that we're speaking about?
100%. That's why gods and mortals always have debates in these stories. Gods are angry and jealous because, like, look at them. I gave them everything and they forgot me. And more like, we don't need you. Like, I got this. I'm tasting what I gave you down here. It's natural.
Could it be the mere fact that they just can't relate to each other and they're prone
I
to
think they
also,
can. That's why they can argue.
it seems to me like they're prone to always misinterpret and misunderstand each other
And
because
that's life. They're not gods aren't excluded from life. No one is bigger than a program. Nobody. If I could tattoo that, I would in a more like probably sick language. But no one's bigger than a program.
are you talking about the program like people way?
Yes, because the program allows you to be as flexible as you see fit, but to some degree, it will also fight back to say, "All right, look, mate, if you think you're bigger than this, we will remind you what comes with that."
Ergo, nobody is beyond reproach in a sense, even
Yeah,
though God.
and that's what makes that fun, because you can otherwise, if they didn't relate to each other, it'd just be, even if they're wrong, which they have shown to be, they will still say, well, don't question. And that defeats the purpose of a mortal having an experience. But there's the other flip side where some stories where man teaches them.
Yeah, interesting.
That's
Interesting.
poetry to me.
I bet it is.
Absolutely. Look at me
Okay.
all yelling and shit. God damn.
Hmm. Here's another one.
Mm.
I'm also fascinated with the other side of things. Now we've sort of ascended up.
Yes.
Let's go the
Let's
other
go.
direction. Let's
Mm.
descend downwards. How do you turn a mortal into a demon or a monster?
Halfway there.
Halfway there.
Mm.
In either direction, I suppose.
Mm.
Hmm. But as we know, demons and some monsters are somewhat immortal too, don't you think?
Yeah. From public figures to even where the source of some sources of information comes from as well. I love the saying, fight fire with fire.
What did this be doing?
Oh,
Where
this
you
is, bro, I've had conversations with monsters, okay?
going? Okay, fair enough. But
In
uh,
any field, um, again, nature is wanting to look at fire and touching it. and when you touch, you get burned. But once you understand and have respect for that element, you learn how to work with it. It's the same in that context. But if you completely ignore it, that's at your own downfall.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Absolutely, brother. Come over to this side.
Yeah, sure. But the one thing I
Okay.
can say though is there's a commonality, like
Yes.
between gods and demons. The one thing I see sticking out is immortality between the two.
Hmm. Hmm.
The common like trait that they seem to always share immortality, and perhaps that's why they're somewhat perfect adversaries.
Um,
Maybe not perfect, but they're a
yeah,
match.
I think it's just all about for both ends, it's the journey. That's all it ever comes back down to. Because once you've ticked that box, it's all about, all right, what do we do in between? That's why they come down here and say, what haven't we done before?
Hmm.
Because they know who they are. So I ain't got to worry about, oh, are they going to remember me, or haven't I done this, or what do I need to do to prove X, Y, and Z? It's like, nah, man. Let's go and figure out what other facets haven't we figured out, or what do I need to replay?
Hmm. What about us? Are you saying we haven't figured out who we are?
That's a journey. Um, I figured out enough. I've definitely figured out enough, but um, I'm always reminded that there are levels. There are levels to this thing, and that's what keeps me
see, now you just reverted back
okay. But
to
let me finish on what level I'm talking about.
uh,
Um, in this realm of gods and monsters, there are hierarchies,
hmm,
and it's not to say that they govern each other, but it's like the concept of a mentor as well. You think you're ready, and then they say, "Yo, wait, just cool now." You move too fast, you'll be like, "Well, we tried to tell you to chill out." That's all it is. It's not them saying, "Oh no, like you can't go there. You can go wherever you want," but it just comes with some caution as to how fast you're trying to get somewhere. And in my case,
yeah.
I feel the common thing is between gods and monsters is what they know, the knowledge that they have. They both share the same thing, but they use it differently.
I mean, I don't know. Is it guaranteed to have? Are you talking about the enlightenment
Hmm.
of being who they are?
Yeah, because how could both be allowed to tempt a mortal who wants to be immortal?
Well, you just said it right there. They want something, or they think they need something.
Hmm. So it comes back to what I said. I would give a mortal everything he wants, and what they want is down to the individual.
Hmm. I mean, from what you're saying, I hear you, but I think mortals, for me, compared to infinite beings of sorts, right? In a sense,
Hmm.
they're sort of like children,
Yes.
and I say that because to a degree they don't know what they want. So you can give them everything they want. I would argue they probably still want more because it's probably not really what they.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily what they need.
All right.
It might not necessarily do the trick
If
or what they imagine. Go.
back to that word satisfaction. If where you are, and
Mm.
more some where people are who have matured. After a while, they realize they don't need a
Yeah.
lot. Uh,
True.
Essentially, because of experience, they say, you know what, it's all noise. But when I speak of mortal, I'm speaking of the average Joe.
Mm.
They come out the womb, they go to school, and they're like, oh, it's what we all have to figure out or get past. I even
Yeah.
saw a tweet that said, I'm now at the age where I thank God for every little thing. And it resonated with me because it shows that once you really think more about the essentials that you have or that you're able to attain, you start to realize that, wow, the distraction is what clouds your mind, as we do know. So from
Yeah.
both points of view, it's like, um, while they're on their journey of, uh, one where they're trying to ascend or go the other way, it's like, well,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm still going to cut out these things to get there and even going the other way.
Mm.
That's why some people, when you find out that they are this like crazy person, you're like, wow, I never saw the signs because they were so focused that they didn't need much to be satisfied with where they were trying to attain or where they were trying to get to. That's why people love crime documentaries because they're like, wow, like and that's some of the parts of human nature that people like to explore. That's an amazing example of that because why would people be fascinated about how they did what they did if they're being labeled as like these people that you should never want to think like anyway?
Perhaps it could be purely enlightenment. What they, you know.
It's another form of it, but I still go back to the saying I live by is use fire with fire on
I
both
mean,
ends of the spectrum.
that saying alone, that saying alone is tricky because as much as I think most humans that's appealing, but it
Take
also
that
speaks
word you
about
just said
the other side.
to most humans.
Yeah, yeah. But at the same time, it also brings to mind the same saying that um, eye for an eye leaves everybody blind.
Hmm.
So
And who teaches you
where's
not to do that?
what happened to the enlightenment?
It's still
How
there.
can you be enlightened at the same time?
Enlightenment was never, oh, I sacrificed everything to appease people. That's one thing when I discovered that, I was like, oh wow. Um
I'm not speaking about sacrificing.
yeah, but I'm glad you brought that up because it gets people think, oh, the more the less you. I'm like, what? Why are these men in these temples learning how to be a guy's ass to stay ready, to stay ready? But um, there's the discipline that comes with honing and being mindful, but i.e., that is used as a last resort if someone doesn't want to listen to reason.
Yeah,
And the wiser you
that I
are,
agree with.
the quicker you identify someone who isn't willing to listen to reason.
Yes, you do. Yes.
Humans are
It,
going to be like, no,
quick.
he murdered this and oh, he stole that, and I'm like, brother, please. There are systems in place. Whether how good they are, that we can debate on, like absolutely, but they are in place to make sure that um, when that needs to be applied, it will be.
Mm. I hear you. I hear you. But I still don't see where you're going with this.
I'm just on one.
What... But I hear you. But for me personally, but you did make a good point. I think, you have to be prepared for anything,
Hmm.
but you also be willing to do what's necessary.
Yeah. Okay. I think, yeah, you just reminded me
Certain
of what
things
you asked as
is
well.
supposed to be last resort. It's supposed to be
Hmm.
last resort. So not everything it gets a reaction or response
Hmm.
of to be extreme.
Yeah. That's what you said.
Because
Where does the enlightenment come from in terms of which ways you do go? Yeah.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah, because when I came to that path, and I'm like, well, being good is all about, you know, enlightenment. I'm like, yeah, well, it is, but um being nice is still performative. Being nice is still used as a strategy to conquer your enemy. So in that case,
it's
enlightenment is about,
intact.
yeah, so enlightenment is about seeing way beyond um the norm, enable for you to make a decision that enables or enlightens you in that situation. And that happens way before it physically taking place.
Yeah,
So chess,
I'm
I'm
curious
sure.
about.
Hmm?
Yeah, you playing some checkers.
Yeah, absolutely. Like before a man takes out pawn or king, he's thought about that move 100 times over.
Or played it 1,000 times in his head.
Right.
I'm curious
Women
about
prepare
this.
for arguments, men prepare for action.
Interesting,
Hmm.
but it's a good. It's a good quote.
That's mine,
Um,
by the way. That's documented.
sorry.
Yeah, that's mine. That's fresh off the dome.
I
I hope it is. Hope I
believe you. I
didn't,
believe
I hope I didn't
you.
steal any like any mentors quotes, man. I listen to a lot of people. So
I'm just thinking about the concept of, or the ideology, and as well as the definition behind demon,
oh
evil,
hmm.
and what's good. Who decides what a god is, and
I,
why did you make it so a god is something that something an immortal could never fully accomplish?
first part, uh you said what is so the
Evil,
fascination between a demon and
being bad,
yeah,
evil.
easy. Um we're born with two sides. Night and day, um air and fire.
Mm.
Yeah, like that's as old as it's older than time. Way older than
Mm.
time. Yeah, way older than time, brother.
There
So
you
because
go.
of that, that's what makes um life so interesting. Now, it got up until the point where people who understood this very well started to say, you know what? Let's just make them focus on the good. Only do good. Too much of that,
Mm.
problematic. Because what happens to the other half of you? Becomes neglected, um, starts to become repressed, and eventually it's gonna have to find a way out. That just came to mind. So the fascination is again back to the crime docs, the crime doc lovers out there. Um, those are extreme, like cases of what happens to
yeah,
people who don't get to express that. You throw in their environments, their upbringings, and you sprinkle some disease in there mentally. It's just an extreme case. But naturally, what a person gets from studying those is what would they do or how did they get there? And if they were there, would they get out? Because they're not doing that in their daily lives,
yeah.
so to speak. And what was the next part after that?
Uh, what what made people decide what
Yeah,
define God
what's good and what's bad? Yeah. So
as something
what's
was
good
good saying?
and bad? What? Who decides who's God? Yeah. See, man. See, I'm locked in. I need to write these questions. What's good and bad? Um, that's an interesting one. I'm always learning more about that. Because even that as well. Yeah, I think that is very subjective because um environment and
There you
rules and I'm all for it. It plays a very high um subjective because I love when people say how's there manuals for everything but no manuals for life, and it's like, well, there is, but
go.
it's a lot more complicated and it requires the individual to do as much work as possible to differentiate how to honor the lives that they live, and honor meaning a level of respect. So because two people growing up in two different completely households, but when they're faced with the same situations, one made one would definitely determine one as, oh, that's cool, and another would be like, I would never do that. And there's been studies I've heard about where scientists measure the different outcomes and life paths of individuals who live a certain way, and they measure it to,
Yeah,
okay, if one is doing bad and one is doing good, the pinnacle would be, okay, do they live do they leave do they have a successful life with the choices that they made? And the results are always interesting because, i.e., we've been told that if you live a good life, then you should have X, Y, and Z. Whereas when one starts to get older and they start to see, hey, wait a minute, I'm being the nice guy, but I'm not getting X, Y, and Z. But the bad guy is, you start to realize, well, bad is just, living in their truth. It's just been disguised wrong.
yeah.
And good is, oh, you're putting on a performance to fool yourself eventually. That's why the frustration
Mm.
comes in, because then it's like, oh, I've been living how someone else has told me to live instead of me figuring out for
Mm.
myself. And who decides who's God? Who? You don't. I don't think.
Pause right there. Pause right there.
Mm,
Pause right there. I need to ask you this. So, what you just said,
mm.
because we just sort of unwrapped something right there.
That was a quick version.
Would you somewhat argue that to a degree, being good or calling describing somebody or good or bad is somewhat of a tool that people can use to their advantage
Yeah, absolutely.
and perhaps somebody's disadvantage. Perhaps a
Yes,
tool of war.
definitely, definitely. Uh, perception again, because as soon as someone, uh, yeah, perception and environment, they play hand in hand, because depending, no
Yeah,
one wants to be spoken badly about because it will have an effect on your image. The details are
Yeah.
depending on what, i.e., that person did and how strong the consequence is towards that person's name. Then it starts to cause some issues.
Yeah. Yeah. It sort of illuminates the idea of his story, right? Because
Mm,
it's written by the winners. The losers don't have a say in what the history book
yeah,
has to say about
that's always a sad one.
it, you know.
Because what did the
So
winners do?
it's
That's the
correct.
mm,
And the moral of the story is don't lose the war,
yeah.
you know. But just to bring a bow tie and everything.
Don't forget your question as well.
No,
Who
just going into go on.
who decides who's God?
You want to okay? Yeah, let's explore that before we go somewhere else. I want to hear what you have to
Mhm.
say.
I think
I
no
just say
one.
this though. I just say this.
Mm, mm.
Let's, let's be honest. There's nobody here that could ever say they've seen something of a god to know what a god is. But
You
for
think?
some reason, everybody seems to have an idea of what a god is.
As they
I just,
should. As
I'm
they
listening.
should. Um, from where I sit, I think I see it every day.
Okay, I'm listening. It's very curious.
Um, because if I'm in between both,
Yeah.
who decides is, I think, to some extent, some already some come that way. I'll be so real. Some come that way.
Interesting.
But at the same time, we're all given a chance to be able to see if that's possible. That's why I appreciate um, your question at the start of this, because um, that's why no one's bigger than the program. Like, everyone has a chance to be able to have that um, ability to express themselves to see if that's possible.
Mm,
It's just how long and how many times does it take? that's that's the thing. So because even those who are already, they still they still tumble down because they're like, hey, you know, like, I'm bigger than the program. And it's like, well, you, because you have more
It's 22 hours.
because you have more responsibility with knowing what that means.
yeah.
If you are careless, you will see what happens a lot quicker than those who don't.
Are you speaking of the laws?
Hmm. Not necessarily. I'm trying not to mention them. That's a new thing for me. They do exist, and I'm not ignorant of that. But um, it's in a sense that it can be more simple as to just knowing that if you know how to drive a car and
Yeah.
you don't indicate, you're aware of what can happen. But there are those who are gifted enough to know how a car operates, what car they feel most comfortable in. Um, I may even say the God is in the details, so to speak. Because you can either get obsessed in it and go crazy, or you can say, I know enough in order to enjoy the ride and hit some pump, some speed bumps and be, oh no, you know, yeah, because that happens as well. Like, a God doesn't mean that you know every single thing that's happened, but you will get inclinations of what could happen.
Premonition.
Yeah, that gets stronger. Where some they're like, I had a feeling, but they're just like, oh no, I was hungry. Like, what?
I mean, what's a premonition to a god? Could it just be a simply mere? It's like a visual intuition. Do you know what I mean? Don't necessarily have to be,
An example would
answer.
be to leave that person alone.
Yeah, this is instincts.
Sounds simple, but it's grandiose, because when people come across people that look so tantalizing, either the story that they could have, the experience, the encounter, the things that they could build, um, one could simply be, you know what, let's not do that this time. Or let's not go down this road again, because it's like we know what happens.
Yeah, we do.
But then there's so many other paths that are open to you. Why only this one that mortals would be concerned with? Because it's the most exciting. I want to do it again. It's like, well, it's your life, mate.
Yeah.
Or the
Yeah.
traumatic one is, oh, I could fix it. Like, no. It's not. Who are you for you to fix? That path is already set. It's been created. It's done. You're not fixing it. Don't get too big for your boots. Just pick another path. There's so many to choose from.
I mean, for the way I see it, I do actually see it as laws or stipulations, if you will. Or
Yeah. I prefer that.
because I think like you're saying, it's repercussions that comes with excessive natures, um, folly thinking, if not folly being, and there's always a off balance kickback, if you will, that things sort of kind of happens. Um, I think essentially, when we're speaking about gods, demons, good, bad, I think these are all tools of a larger game at play. And
I
they're
agree.
devices to be used to your advantage or to your disadvantage.
Yes,
To a
sir.
degree, you have to have the understanding, intuition, strength to remain the victor, to keep that balance in your favor, I suppose. Otherwise, it's a situation that you don't necessarily want to be on the other end of, because it's to your detriment. It's
Definitely, absolutely.
fortune, you know. So as much as it might just be like mere words, and we just think, oh man, this is just stories that we can read about in books, and watch cartoons on TV. I think we're seeing these things play all the time,
Absolutely.
every day, and we don't necessarily pay enough attention to it. I think we see
That's the trick.
gods and demons every day.
That's the
They're all
trick.
around us, and yeah, it's to our detriment if we don't pay attention to what we see. Go on. You know.
Anything else?
Nah, I wanted you to retort before
Yeah, no, I
Work on.
completely, bro. This is why I love the genre, why I love story, because like and it even took me a while for me to get over the fact that people say so confidently that, oh, you're a grown adult watching these things, and I'm like, well, you know, these stories are how many years old, and they are always being told and being sought to be told in new ways because there's always more to discover. Essentially, it's about yourself and how you work as an individual. You're so complex. No reality TV show can explain that. None. And in doing so, yeah, the more you help understand yourself, the better decisions you can make. It's just plain and simple.
Yeah, I agree.
But people
All
like
right,
saying the
Spence.
complex as a flex, not as a reality. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This was great, man.
Thanks for
Um,
the part two, man. Thanks for the questions. Really, yeah.
no, man, it was. I appreciate you coming and having a sit down with me. You know, I like to go on these mad.
Go on, join the side, bro. Really want to.
You know what I mean? But yeah, this was great, man. Thanks so much. Appreciate everyone support
Likewise.
us.
Thanks, everyone.
I know so people was Chime was. I've been watching the previous episode and seemed to appreciate it. So yeah, I appreciate that too. Thanks everyone. If you can leave your thoughts, I've noticed a few people have left comments as well on the page.
Amazing.
Yes, indeed. Another one. Strings, my poet. Just another rabbit hole. Thanks so much. Take care. Till next time.